My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 29 years old. And 6 years ago, my own mother called me on a cold December night and said, "Calm as still water. Don't come home for Christmas, sweetheart. Your sister doesn't want you here." I was standing in a gas station parking lot. 40 degrees outside. Phone pressed against my ear. And in that one sentence, my family chose my sister over me without blinking. What they didn't know was, one day, I'd be the one they came crawling to. Growing up, the Callahan house in Clover Falls, Ohio looked like something off a greeting card. Red shutters, wraparound porch, the smell of mom's apple pie hitting you before you even opened the front door. But behind that pretty front door, everything had a favorite. And that favorite was never me. My sister Renee was 3 years older, and she ran that household like a quiet little dictator. Not loud about it, never loud. She was charming, calculated, and our parents were completely blind to it. Whatever Renee wanted, Renee got. Whatever Renee felt, the whole family felt. Me? I was just background noise. The explosion between us started with a guy named Derek Paulson. We dated 8 months. He was kind, funny, genuinely good to me, one of those rare relationships that just felt easy. When he transferred out of state, we ended things on good terms. Or at least I did. What I didn't know, what nobody told me, was that for the last 3 months of my relationship with Derek, Renee had been texting him. Late nights. Personal conversations. The kind of messages you absolutely do not send to your little sister's boyfriend. I found out through a screenshot from a mutual friend. Late Wednesday night. There was Renee's name, right there on Derek's phone, bold as anything. I confronted her immediately. And instead of apologizing, instead of showing even 1 second of remorse, she looked me dead in the face and said, "You're so dramatic." It was just talking. Just talking. I went to my parents. My hands were shaking. I showed them the screenshot. Mom barely glanced at it. "Nora, why do you always have to start something with your sister?" Dad just walked out of the room. I stood there, screenshot in hand, completely alone in a house full of people. But that wasn't even the worst thing Renee did. Because 2 weeks later, she went behind my back again, and this time, it didn't just hurt me. It destroyed everything. 2 weeks after the Derek situation, I was trying to move on. Hurting quietly, the way I always did, keeping it together on the outside while something burned steadily on the inside. I was back at my apartment, finals week, running on coffee and sheer stubbornness. I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let Renee steal my peace on top of everything else she'd already taken. I was going to finish my semester strong, go home for Christmas, and handle it like an adult. That plan lasted exactly 11 days. The call came from my childhood best friend, Jessie. Jessie had grown up 2 houses down from us. She knew my family almost as well as I did, had eaten at our dinner table hundreds of times, knew all our dynamics, all our history. She wasn't a gossip. Which is exactly why, when she called me that Tuesday night sounding nervous, I knew immediately something was genuinely wrong. "Nora, I don't even know how to say this," she started. "Just say it," I told her. She took a breath. "Renee called your boss." I went completely still. Jessie kept going. I could hear her choosing every word carefully. Renee had apparently called the marketing firm where I'd just landed a competitive internship, the one I'd worked an entire year to get, and told them that I had a history of creating hostile work environments, that I was difficult to manage, that they should reconsider my placement. She had called my boss, pretending to be a concerned former colleague, using a fake name. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after that call ended. Not crying. Just processing. Running it back. Trying to find an angle where this made some kind of sense. There wasn't one. This wasn't a sister being messy over a guy anymore. This was calculated. This was Renee looking at something I'd built for myself, something that had nothing to do with her, and deciding to put her hands on it anyway. Why? Because I'd confronted her. Because for once in my life, I hadn't just swallowed it and moved on. And this was the punishment. But that wasn't even the worst part. When I called my mother, shaking, voice cracking, the whole thing, she already knew. Renee mentioned she had some concerns about your workplace behavior, Mom said carefully. She already knew. And she hadn't called me. Mom, she used a fake name. She could have gotten me fired. Silence on the line. Then, Nora, your sister loves you. She worries about you. I almost laughed. I actually almost laughed out loud at that. She worries about me, I repeated slowly. You know how Renee is, Mom said. Like that explained everything. Like that excused everything. She gets protective sometimes. Protective. Right. I hung up the phone. Sat back down on that bed. Stared at the ceiling of my little apartment, the one I paid for myself, the one nobody helped me find, the one that was mine and only mine. And I made myself a promise right there. I was done fighting for a seat at a table that was never really set for me. I threw myself into that internship like my life depended on it. Showed up early, stayed late, delivered work that made my supervisor stop mid-meeting once and say, Nora, this is genuinely impressive. Whatever Renee had said to them, it hadn't worked. I was still there. Still standing. And I was just getting started. But here's what I didn't know yet. Renee wasn't done either. And the next move she made was so deeply personal, so deliberately cruel, that even Jessie, who had seen everything, called me afterward and said, I don't even recognize her anymore. January came cold and gray, and I was doing okay. Not great, but okay. I had my internship, my apartment, my dignity mostly intact. I'd made peace with skipping Christmas. Told myself it was just one holiday. Told myself I was fine. I was getting pretty good at lying to myself. It was Jessie who told me first. Again. She called on a Saturday morning while I was grocery shopping, and the moment I heard her voice, I stopped right there in the cereal aisle, cart half full, because that nervous tone was back. The one that meant brace yourself. I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm, she said. Jessie, Renee is dating Marcus. The cereal box I was holding hit the floor. Marcus Webb. My Marcus. The guy I dated for 2 years after Derek. The relationship that actually meant something, the one where I'd met his parents, kept a drawer at his place, genuinely believed we had a future. We'd broken up 8 months ago mutually because of distance and timing, not because of any bad blood. Renee knew exactly how much that relationship had meant to me. She knew. I stood in that grocery store aisle for a full minute, completely frozen. A little kid walked past and stared at the cereal box on the floor. I picked it up slowly, put it back on the shelf, and walked out of the store without buying a single thing. I sat in my car, gripped the steering wheel. 2 of them, I thought. She'd gone after 2 of them. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't Renee being messy or impulsive. This was a pattern. And patterns have intent behind them, but that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later when Mom actually called me for the first time in 6 weeks. I thought maybe, finally, she was calling to acknowledge what was happening. Fast forward 3 years. I am now running my own business, Olivia Harper Creative, a boutique design studio in downtown Chicago. We specialize in branding, digital campaigns, and small business growth strategies. Every logo, every website, every project is a reminder that I can create value, even when the world overlooked me. The journey wasn't easy. Initially, I worked alone, late nights fueled by coffee and determination. I remember staring at my first client's brief, a small bakery wanting a logo, and thinking, what if they hate it? What if nobody hires me again? I fumbled through the first meeting, words jumbled, hands shaking, yet the client laughed gently. Olivia, I trust you, she said. That moment, just a simple expression of trust, ignited a fire inside me that nothing could extinguish. Word of mouth brought more clients. A yoga studio needed branding. A coffee shop needed a website overhaul. Slowly, Olivia Harper Creative grew. Every success was accompanied by anxiety. Every new client came with pressure. Owning a business, I realized, wasn't just about creativity. It was about resilience, patience, and navigating constant uncertainty. One particularly grueling week, I had 3 major clients with overlapping deadlines. A tech startup demanded a full branding package by Friday. A local bookstore needed their website updated. A boutique wanted a complete social media campaign. My calendar looked like a war map, red circles marking deadlines, alarms blaring every hour. Sleep became a luxury. Coffee was my sustenance. And yet, I loved it. The chaos was mine. Every challenge reinforced the idea that I could survive, I could excel, I could thrive. I was careful not to mention him to anyone connected to my family. I was careful, but not careful enough. I still don't know exactly how Renee found out about Daniel. My best guess is a mutual connection, someone from the rooftop party who knew someone who knew someone. Clover Falls is small that way, even when you're living an hour outside of it. Gossip travels like weather. You don't see it coming until it's already on top of you. What I know for certain is this. By the time I found out she knew, she'd already made her move. It started subtly. The way Renee always started things quietly, with plausible deniability built right in. Daniel mentioned casually one evening that he'd gotten a follow request on Instagram from someone named Renee Callahan. He showed me the profile. My sister's face smiled back at me from the screen. My stomach dropped. "Do you know her?" he asked. I took a breath. "She's my sister." He looked confused. "You never mentioned a sister." "I know," I said. "Don't accept it." He didn't push. He declined the request. I thought maybe that was the end of it. But I was wrong. 2 weeks later, Daniel came to dinner quieter than usual. Not distant exactly, just thoughtful in a way that felt new. I asked him twice if everything was okay. He said yes both times. It was on the drive home that he finally said it. Someone reached out to me. Through LinkedIn. I kept my eyes on the road. Who? He pulled out his phone. Handed it to me at a red light. It was a message from a profile I didn't recognize, fake name, no photo, created recently. But the writing, the specific way certain sentences were constructed, the particular words chosen, I knew that voice. I'd grown up hearing it. The message told Daniel that I had a history of emotional instability, that my last 2 relationships had ended because of my behavior, that he deserved to know the real Nora before things got too serious. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down very carefully in the cup holder. The light turned green. I drove. "I don't believe it," Daniel said quietly. "I want you to know that. I'm telling you because you deserve to know, not because I believe it." I nodded. Kept driving. Kept my face completely composed. But inside, something that had been simmering for months finally hit a full boil. She had come for Derek. She had come for my internship. She had come for Marcus. And now she was coming for Daniel for this new, good, untouched thing I had built quietly and carefully and completely on my own. Enough. I was done being the sister who absorbed it. Done being the daughter who called mom hoping for backup and got excuses instead. Done shrinking myself down to make Renee feel comfortable in her own skin. Done. I called mom the next morning. No small talk, no warm-up. "Renee is sending anonymous messages to my boyfriend, trying to sabotage my relationship," I said. "I need you to hear that clearly." A pause. "Nora, that's a serious accusation." "I have the screenshot, Mom." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll talk to her," she finally said. "That's what you said about the internship," I replied. "How did that go?" Silence. I hung up. Whatever Mom said to Renee, it clearly wasn't enough. Because 4 days later, I got a text from Renee herself. No apology, no explanation. Just 7 words that told me everything about who my sister really was. "You should have just stayed out of my way." I screenshotted immediately. Saved it. Sent a copy to Jesse. And then I did something I had never done before in 23 years of being Nora Callahan. I stopped reacting and started planning, because here's what Renee never understood about me. She'd spent years treating me like background noise, and background noise doesn't fight back. She had no idea what I looked like when I was actually paying attention. She was about to find out. I gave myself exactly 1 week to feel everything, the anger, the hurt, the exhaustion of being somebody's punching bag for years. 1 week. Then I packed it all away and got to work. First thing I did was call Jesse. Not to vent, I was done venting. I called because Jesse worked in HR at a mid-sized company downtown and understood documentation, paper trails, and how damaging false professional accusations could actually be in the right context. Save everything, she told me. Every screenshot, every date, every incident. Build the file. I already had. Daniel was steady through all of it. Never wobbled. Never made me feel like a liability. One night, he held my hands across the dinner table and said, "Whatever this is, I'm not going anywhere." I believed him. And honestly, that terrified me a little. Because every good thing in my life had been touched by Renee eventually. But I refused to let fear make my decisions anymore. We got engaged on a Thursday night in November. No big production, just Daniel, a small ring he'd picked out himself, and my kitchen counter with takeout going cold behind us. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We decided on a June wedding. Small, intentional, exactly us. And then came the question I'd been quietly dreading, the guest list. Daniel asked about my family gently, carefully, the way you approach something you know is loaded. I was honest with him, laid out everything, start to finish, no edited version. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he just said, "Whatever you decide, I support it completely." I stared at the ceiling that night for a long time. Here's the thing nobody tells you about cutting family off. It's not one decision. It's 100 small decisions that build up until one day you realize the relationship has been gone for a while and you were just the last one to officially acknowledge it. I decided to invite my parents. Not Renee. Not because I owed them, I didn't. But because some stubborn piece of me still wanted them to show up. Wanted them to, just once, choose me without being forced to. Mom called when she received the invitation. "Renee isn't on here," she said. "No," I said. "She's not." "Nora, she's your sister. You can't have a wedding without your sister." "Watch me," I said quietly. Silence. Then Mom's voice shifted harder, colder than I expected. "If Renee isn't invited, your father and I won't be coming either." I stood completely still. There it was. After everything, after every screenshot, every sabotaged relationship, every Christmas I spent alone, they were still choosing her. "Okay, Mom," I said. "That's your choice." 3 days before my wedding, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up, that quiet gut instinct that tells you this matters before your brain catches up. "Is this Nora Callahan?" "Yes," I said slowly. "My name is Patricia Webb. I'm Marcus's mother." I sat up straight in bed. Marcus. Renee's Marcus. My ex Marcus. I hadn't spoken to anyone in that circle in over a year. "I'm sorry to call out of nowhere," she said. "But I think you need to know what's happening." Patricia spoke carefully, like someone who had rehearsed this call several times before making it. She told me that Marcus and Renee had broken up 2 months ago. Badly. And that during the fallout, Marcus had told her things Renee had said about me over the years, things she had done, the fake LinkedIn message, the call to my internship. "My son feels terrible," Patricia said. "He didn't know the full picture when they were together. None of us did." I was quiet for a moment. "Why are you telling me this now?" She paused. "Because Renee has been telling people in your hometown that your fiancé isn't who you think he is. She's been spreading stories about Daniel, making things up. And it's reaching people who will be at your wedding." My grip tightened on the phone. She wasn't done. Renee had apparently been busy. Patricia had heard from 3 different people that Renee was circulating a story, that Daniel had a shady financial past, and that I was too naive to see it. Complete fiction. Designed specifically to humiliate me on the one weekend that was supposed to be entirely mine. Even uninvited, she was still trying to ruin it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that my own mother had heard the rumors. And instead of shutting them down, she'd said nothing. I told Daniel everything that morning over coffee. Watched his jaw tighten as I talked. When I finished, he set his cup down and said, "She doesn't get to do this. Not this weekend." We made calls. Jesse helped us get ahead of it, quietly reaching out to key guests, setting the record straight before the narrative could spread further. Daniel pulled together documentation of his finances without being asked, not because he owed anyone proof, but because he refused to let a lie breathe. By nightfall, we had contained it. I sat on our apartment steps afterward, cool air on my face, genuinely exhausted. Jessie sat beside me. "You still want to go through with it?" I looked at her. More than ever. The venue was a restored farmhouse 20 minutes outside the city. Cream walls, soft string lights, wildflowers everywhere. Daniel and I had picked it together on a rainy Sunday afternoon, laughing over venue brochures spread across our living room floor. It was perfect. It was ours. I arrived early with Jessie to do a final walkthrough. The morning light was coming through the tall windows in long golden strips. Everything looked exactly as we'd planned. And then I walked into the bridal suite. My mother was sitting in the corner chair. I stopped in the doorway. Jessie went still beside me. Mom looked smaller than I remembered. Older. She was dressed for a wedding soft blue dress, hair done, which meant she had come. Actually come. Without Renee, without conditions, without calling ahead. She stood up when she saw me. Her eyes were red. "I almost didn't come," she said. And then I realized, if I didn't, I would lose you completely. And I can't, Nora, I can't lose you. I didn't move from the doorway. "You chose her," I said quietly. "Every single time, Mom. For years." "I know." Her voice cracked. "I know I did. And I have no excuse that's good enough. Renee always seemed like she needed more. And you always seemed so strong." "I was strong because I had no other option," I said. She flinched. Like the truth had physically landed on her. Jessie quietly slipped out of the room. Just me and Mom now, morning light between us, years of silence finally taking up the space they deserved. I won't pretend it was a movie moment. She didn't say the perfect thing. I didn't instantly forgive her. It was awkward and painful and honest in the way that only real conversations are. But she was there. She had chosen, for once, to show up for me. I let her stay. Dad arrived an hour later. He hugged me at the door and held on the way he had that Easter years ago, too long, too tight, like a man trying to make up for lost time in a single embrace. I let him hold on. The ceremony was small. 30 guests, string quartet, wildflowers on every chair. Daniel cried before I even reached the altar, which made Jessie cry, which honestly made everyone cry. It was the most peaceful I had felt in years. And then, halfway through the reception, the venue doors opened. 30 heads turned slowly toward the entrance. The room went completely quiet. Renee was standing in the doorway. Renee stood in that doorway like she hadn't just crashed a wedding she wasn't invited to. Hair done, dressed up, chin lifted. 30 guests staring at her in complete silence. I felt Daniel's hand tighten around mine. Jessie was already moving toward her. But I touched her arm. "Don't," I said quietly. "I've got this." I stood up, walked across that reception hall slowly, calmly, the way you walk when you finally stop being afraid of someone. I stopped 2 feet in front of her. "Renee." She opened her mouth, closed it. Up close she looked different. Tired. Like whatever performance she'd been maintaining for years had finally gotten too heavy to carry. "I just need to talk to you," she said. "Not today," I said. Simple. Final. She didn't leave, though. Not immediately. She stood there and the words started coming out rushed, unpolished, nothing like the calculated Renee I'd grown up with. She said she was sorry. Said she didn't know why she did what she did. Said she'd been in therapy for 4 months and was starting to understand things about herself she hadn't wanted to face. I listened. Gave her that much. Then I said, I believe you're sorry, Renee. But sorry doesn't give me back what you took. My internship. My peace. The Christmases I spent alone. You don't get to walk in here and make this about your healing. Her eyes filled. I know. Good, I said. Then you know why you need to leave. She left. No scene. No explosion. Just Renee turning around and walking back through those doors and the soft sound of them closing behind her. I stood there for a moment. Breathed in. Breathed out. Then I turned around to face 30 people watching me in complete silence. Daniel was standing by our table, eyes steady on mine, waiting. I smiled at him. Walked back across the room. Sat down and picked up my glass. Jesse leaned over and whispered, that was the most powerful thing I have ever seen. The karma didn't come in one dramatic moment. It came quietly, the way real consequences usually do. Renee spent the following year in genuine reflection. The therapy was real. The remorse was real. I know because Mom told me carefully over coffee 6 months later, the first real conversation we'd had in years. I didn't rush forgiveness. Didn't perform it for anyone's comfort. But I left the door cracked. Not wide open, just cracked. Because I'm not interested in carrying hatred into the life I worked so hard to build. After all this, I have learned that you should never give up your happiness, peace, or self-respect for people who are toxic in your life. True freedom and power are what you create for yourself, and those who fail to value you should never control your journey. This was my story. If it touched your heart, make sure to subscribe. And if you're going through something similar, share it in the comments. I read them all. Your story matters more than you think. Thanks for watching. Take care.